Kelly's Court is back in session. On the docket today, a ban on courtroom cameras in a case that has captured the attention of the nation. A judge deciding to ban cameras during next Monday's court appearance for the Colorado shooting suspect, James Holmes, and possibly thereafter. That is when formal charges on Monday are expected to be filed against the man accused of shooting 71 people, killing 12. The judge says that he made the decision based on the objections by the suspect's attorneys. They don't want him to be filmed, and now he won't be. He would not get into the specifics of why. Now, there are questions about what this could mean for the trial, for the victims, their families, and the American public, who have taken an interest in this case for obvious reasons. One woman who survived the ordeal says she wants the cameras in.
He wanted the attention, so I think he should get every bit of it, especially the bad attention that he's getting. I think the people should be able to see his reaction to the judge naming every victim. I just want him to realize, like, he's not so tough anymore.
Joining me now, former prosecutor, now defense attorney Mark Eiglarsh, and Brian Claypool, who is a defense attorney. You tell me, Mark, why this, in your view, is the right decision.
Well, personally, I don't, but legally, I think the judge might be on solid legal footing here. He needs to be able to show, in order to keep the cameras out of the courtroom, that there's a substantial likelihood that it would interfere with the defendant's right to a fair trial. I think that's probably his weakest argument. The strongest argument he'll probably hang his hat on would be it would interfere with the decorum and dignity of the court. And he could, again, point to numerous high public trials where you've got, the frenzy going on. And then the third one, there's like a catch-all. It's kind of like any unique adverse effects from it. He could cite to potential copycat killers who would want to watch every detail, who would hear from the defendant's rants and maybe want to copy that. I just think that this is going to end in conviction, and the judge probably wants to minimize the issues on appeal.
Brian, it can be cathartic for the surviving victims, for their family members. Not all of them can travel to the courthouse and wait in the security lines and so on, and not all of them want to be in the same room with this defendant to watch justice as it's served. That's the argument on the other side, not to mention the nation's interest in this case.
Megyn, you're right. This massacre, unlike other crimes, impacts everybody in the country. This is not just a crime against these families. This impacts everybody, and not only the families and the relatives of the victims, but you, me, Mark. We all have children. I'm a single parent of a 6-year-old girl. There was a 6-year-old girl killed in the movie theater. We no longer have an expectation of safety in a movie theater. We all now have a right, though, to confront this Holmes by watching him in court. And I think this is a patently wrong ruling, and I think people are angry, they're grieving, and this would be a conduit to allow people nationwide to work through their anger and grief, to watch this trial, to work through this. To deprive all of us of this, I think, is very insensitive. And I think this was a very capricious ruling.
What is the rationale, Mark? What's going to happen on Monday? And what is the rationale for allowing the cameras in this week and letting us see him, this defendant, with his crazy colored hair and his strange demeanor, but then not letting us see him actually answer to the charges as they're brought against him?
Only the judge knows. I'm purely speculating, but maybe the judge said, all right, I'll try out this camera thing and see how it goes. And perhaps he didn't like the frenzy that surrounded it. Perhaps he feels that, it's going to adversely affect this on appeal. Again, that's where it's headed, Megyn. This guy, if he gets death, which seems to be likely, no one's going to buy this insanity defense. So he's going to be bouncing around the appellate courts for 20 to 30 years, and the judge either lessens or eliminates one of the main arguments, and that is that the adverse publicity affected his right to a fair trial.
Judges don't. It depends on the judge, right, Brian? But judges don't tend to like cameras in the courtroom because it can lead to grandstanding. It leads to armchair quarterbacking by people sitting at home.
Yes.
And we all remember the O.J. case and Judge Ito, who ruined it for a lot of courtroom cameras.
Right. Megyn, you're right. Generally speaking, judges don't like cameras. Out here in California, hardly any judges allow cameras, probably because of the O.J. Simpson trial. But again, this is a unique case, and I think Mark will agree with this. Jury trials, as they are low-stage drama. So I don't see how this is going to impact the decorum of a courtroom. I mean, we train witnesses, clients, how to testify, how to dress. This really is no different by having a camera in a courtroom. People are already in the courtroom.
Let me throw something out.
Acting.
Go ahead, Mark.
You know, Megyn, we're talking about, Brian raised an interesting argument. I agree, it's what the victims want. But here's what they might not know. I've been doing this 20 years. The system bends over backwards to protect the defendant about his rights. It may anger them more than they possibly could know.
Is this going to be, because so far I think it's just covering Monday's hearing, right? Is this a ruling for the rest of the case, Mark?
I don't believe that he's ruled that they will be out forever, and I think that those arguments can always be made by the media.
Does this suggest he's likely? I mean, if he's going to rule us out on Monday, what's the odds he's going to let us come in on the trial?
I agree, and quite frankly, the founding fathers wanted open courts.
Right.
The cameras simply give us an extra front row seat to it.
And that leads me to my next point, which is the gag order that's been put in place on the attorneys in this case, Brian. We're not supposed to know, we're not allowed to hear from the lawyers. What is this? I mean, how is all of that going to poison this guy's right? We hear from lawyers all the time. That's what voir dire of a jury pool is for, to weed out those who have an inherent bias that they cannot get beyond.
Yeah, Megyn, you're right. Mark does raise a good point about, you know, the founding fathers. We want to protect defendants. We want to preserve appeals. But, you know, enough is enough, really. This is the most unique massacre ever. This is arguably the biggest massacre ever in our entire country. Everybody in this country has a right to see what's going on. Everybody wants to know what's going on. Take off our lawyer hats. And when I heard the news of this, Megyn, my initial reaction was, oh, man, are you kidding me? I want to be able to see what's going on as a father of a little girl. I want to know what's going on. People across this country shouldn't be deprived of that. I encourage people to write letters to this judge. Write letters. Put pressure on him to allow this to be covered.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, listen, let's not pull out the pitchforks, you know. We all want this process to be done fairly so we don't have to repeat it again in 10, 20, however many years. If, God forbid, there's some appellate court that finds that something was done improperly. So that's something to consider. We don't want to go through this ever again.
That's true, too. We'll see. We'll see how he handles it on a go-forward basis. Gentlemen, good debate. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Megyn.
Coming up, a recent mission to the